What's up, party people? It's Survivor Teek. I'm back again for the week 2 analysis. This is a strategic analysis to talk about what went down during last week's episode. And let's just say it was a bad week for Voce, and it was a very interesting week overall. But first off, I just want to thank all the fans out for their overwhelming response and a lot of comments on my beard. And you're all correct. I am trying to look like Rupert Boneham from season 7, Pearl Island. So I'm sure you can tell the similarity. We're basically a spitting image. So, without further ado, let's get right into the episode. So, we didn't see a lot from the different tribes. So, we started off with a little bit of a montage from the Green Tribe, and so this tribe it always seems like something's going on. And we saw Brad essentially running around trying to sneak up on JD and Ricard having a conversation. And Shan's just like, what the heck's going on? Afterwards, Shan talked to Ricard about it. And so I found this really fascinating because it started to show a little bit of the dynamics of the Green Tribe. First off, Genie's nowhere to be found. So I don't know if Genie's even playing the game right now. But whereas I thought Ricard was at the bottom of the totem pole, you kind of saw him starting to build some bonds with JD. You saw Ricard back in the pool, or back in the beach, sorry. I promise you it's reality. It's not a pool. You see Shan with Ricard, where Shan's just like, yo, Brad was spying on you. Ricard, you better watch yourself. So it sounds like Brad's starting to become a little bit of the pariah on that tribe, and they were kind of editing it to seem like he might have been on the chopping block if it came to blows. But I still think Ricard's having a tough time. But Ricard in his confessional said that I trust Shan. We didn't get a lot else from that tribe. JD seems to be trying to build something back up with Ricard, but we know that there's still that alliance in the background where it's essentially everyone but Ricard, the team of 4. So it'll be interesting to see how that tribe plays out. We then shifted to the Blue Tribe, and we don't know much about the Blue Tribe other than it's just the Nasir show. We got this awesome background about Nasir's family life in Sri Lanka and how he's really a survivor. He made the fire that Deshaun wasn't able to build, and we got a really compelling confessional from Sydney, which I thought was really important in this episode, where she said Nasir is going to be the first boot, but I think we need him. I think things are going to change around here. And so on the Blue Tribe, we haven't seen much more of the dynamics. I don't really know who's aligned with anybody on that. It seems natural that Sydney and Deshaun and Erica and Danny maybe get along. I don't know where Heather fits in. We barely have seen Heather other than sitting out in the challenge. So presumably when Sydney says that Nasir's no longer the first boot, maybe it's Heather just as the oldest person that they sat out on the challenge. I don't know, but maybe Blue's never gonna go to tribal council because let's shift gears to the Yellow Tribe. The Yellow Tribe is an absolute mess. And so something I want to touch on, and this actually came out in Voce's exit interview, was that there's been conversation about an intentional matsing. And so this is like deep Survivor conversation topics. And so back in season 25, Survivor Philippines, they also had 3 tribes of 6, very similar setup. And this was probably, I guess, 6, 7, 8 years ago. And there's the one tribe Matsing, which ironically enough was the Blue Tribe, even though the Blue Tribe this season's strong. And they lost the first 4 challenges. And that was before there's any type of tribe swap or anything like that. So it ended up being really 6-6-2. And it was pretty devastating because 2 of probably the strongest people on that entire season were on that tribe. Maybe 3. And they just could not win for the sake of it. However, the 2 that ended up surviving at the end of that tribe made it deep. One of which won, and the other of which was 4th place. And he probably would have won if he was in the final 3 as well. And so it's a very interesting strategy, and this has been hypothesized in the Survivor community for something to look at. And so apparently Evie started the conversation. They haven't shown this on the show about the Yellow Tribe doing intentional matsing and voting out Abraham, voting out Voce. Shows like you're not really in it for the challenges. And I'll get to the immunity challenge in a bit, but the concept is funny because it takes the notion that if you're one of the 2 people remaining at the end, then you'll be put on another tribe and you can find the cracks there. You're a solo dolo, so you're able to kind of navigate yourself effectively, and you're seen a lot more trustworthy when there's a lot of mistrust around. It's risky, but you got some shades of this from Evie also on the journey, so I'll get to that as well. But otherwise on the Yellow Tribe, we saw Xander find the Beware advantage. And so I found this really interesting. This is like the first time there's ever been some type of weird idol like this. It's a 3-way split idol. it only gets effect when everybody else has found it. You have to have some cheesy line that you say in the challenge, and everyone else has to say another cheesy line about goats on astroturf, or butterflies being relatives, or broccoli being little trees. So there's all these different kind of catchphrases that you have to have them all said for it to be quote unquote activated. This seems like a very gamey system. I don't know what I feel about it, but what I do like is it makes the idols that much more difficult to play. There's been a lot of debate in previous seasons about how idols are just too easy. Like Survivor Heroes, Hustlers, I think this was season 33 maybe. This is the one where Ben won. And there's a lot of debate over, they were just giving him idols. And you can even go back to season 19, Samoa, where there was an individual on that, Russell, who I think probably had 4 or 5 idols that season. He was just walking around and found them. So the fact that they made the concept of a hidden immunity idol this difficult and a very socially enveloped system is quite fascinating. And the other key thing, which is huge, I talked about having a vote, additional votes last episode, and this one you lose the vote until the idol is activated, and that's quite interesting. I think this really did mess with Xander this episode, and I think it really turned the favor against him. So Xander found this. Xander's clearly in the game. He got an advantage for the additional vote, and then he lost his vote, and then he has this weird idol. People think he's delusional, but I think Xander really misplayed it. And so this is quite a deviation from seeing Xander correctly play that Hawk Dove prisoner dilemma situation last episode. And this one, he just said, you're in a tribe of 5. Let's tell the other 2 people who he believes to be in an alliance with. So he went ahead and told Voce and Evie. And then Evie went ahead and told Tiffany and told Liana. And so everybody in the tribe knows about his advantage. And it's really silly, I think, telling people that you don't have a vote. People can really easily work around that. And then also knowing that you have an idol puts a big target on his back as well. Ironically, it kind of helped him, just based on, I think, some misplays within the Yellow Tribe. But it's such a double-edged sword in telling people. I think a lot of people in Survivor believe that it's something that can help build trust. Hey, look, I have this advantage. Let's work together. Let's figure it out. When it's 5, imagine if you're in Final 5. You don't tell people about any advantage unless, like, you're trying to bluff or it's part of a gameplay mechanic. But I think he was just probably so confused about the rules. I think most viewers were confused about the rules that he just had to tell some people. But it's going to be his detriment. In fact, we saw Evie even tell Deshawn this in the journey. So let's fast forward to the immunity challenge. And so once again, we saw Blue absolutely killing it, destroying it. And it wasn't even like the typical suspects. It wasn't just Danny. We saw Sydney ahead of Xander right off the first swimming part of it. And then you saw Danny. Then you saw Nasir just good through it. And then the puzzle beasts, again, from the first episode. Deshawn and Erica, they're unstoppable. And we just saw Heather cheering them off on the bench. Blue's dominant. And we saw Green have trouble with the puzzle. It was quite interesting to see that they picked Ricard and JD for the puzzle. I guess they're just trying to move, pick different people for the puzzle and change things around. But they seem to have a lot of trouble with that puzzle. And there was a while where it looked like Yellow was going to catch up. And then Yellow, what can we say? Xander kind of flubbed a little bit too. Then we essentially saw Tiffany take a million years to cross that balance beam. And it was interesting because we actually did see Danny and we did see Brad taking the slower approach on that beam. But for whatever reason, Tiffany she was sitting, she was trying to stand, she fell off. I feel like it's just the beam. You just kind of get yourself over. And you saw after the challenge, you did see Xander and Voce chatting, and then they're just like, why did she just sit on it? Why didn't she move? And then apparently she was worried about getting her legs scraped. But then they're like, this is Survivor. Your legs are going to get scraped. And that's true. So Tiffany lost a lot of time for them. Even that being said, they still had some time to get back into the puzzle. When you saw them starting the puzzle, Green was still having a lot of trouble, and they were quite slow. And so they interestingly chose Evie and Voce for their puzzle, who are apparently, you have a Harvard PhD and a neuroscientist, and they weren't able to get it done. And so at the end of the day, I think they deserve the loss. And like Voce, for somebody who I think is quite intelligent, he also messed up that first original challenge too with the paddles. And I was reading some analysis, and I think technically, like, there were 6 paddles, 6 people, so I think it was Voce was the one who actually never grabbed the paddle, and that should have been the one that he just saw other people hunting for. So Anyway, so like as much as Voce can tell you how many point sixes are in 16.666 or 1/6, he doesn't know how to solve a puzzle for the life of him. So yellow, and so this episode was all about that yellow tribe. The twist from that challenge was that two people go on that journey again, and again, it's a prisoner's dilemmas type of journey. And so we ended up seeing the blue tribe pick Evie, and I found this a curious pick actually. I think when you're chosen, like when you're supposed to pick somebody who could potentially get an advantage or separate them from the tribe dynamics, you usually would go for one of two things. You would go for the person you think is most likely the target to create some type of paranoia, or you pick the strongest player who you think maybe has the best pulse on the tribe. And so if I was an outsider, I would probably think that Xander is maybe a leader of that tribe. And so maybe to pick him. Another reason to pick Xander is because he was already on the previous journey. So it's better to just keep the advantages and the possible advantages just with one person, just so that you know who the target is instead of too many people having that exposure. Or you pick the weakest person just to create tension on a tribe. So you would pick Tiffany, perceivably. So I'm not really sure why they picked Evie. Maybe they had a sense that Evie really was the one calling the shots on that tribe, and they were kind of right. Evie does seem to be the person in control on that yellow team. So they picked Evie, and then Deshawn's like, I'm a go, which I think was the right decision. I don't think they should have picked someone on the green tribe. Like, blue tribe won, bring somebody there as well. It's just so you can know exactly what happens. And so, good move by Deshawn to choose to go on that also. And Deshawn played it cool. I had Deshawn, he didn't get a lot of content from him, but I think he played it really well. He kind of stayed quiet. He didn't give any information to Evie, and Evie just offloaded. And I think, again, this is the intentional matsing strategy. I think Evie knows that her team's going to get decimated. She's going to come in without numbers. She needs to build bonds with other people. So I think she sees bonding with the blue tribe and bonding with Deshawn is something good for her long-term game. So we'll see if it pays off with Evie. But I think talking about how Xander has the advantage, talking about her hit list, talking about the tribe dynamics gives blue a lot of ammo. Deshawn seems like he's well integrated with Danny and Sydney seems to be good with Erica, and then they're all good with Nasir, and who knows about Heather, but knowledge is gonna pass around quick. And so I think Evie was a little bit loose lips. I also did find it interesting about how they played the puzzle there. Evie straight up said, I'm a protect. My vote's valuable, so buddy, you go ahead and risk it. And Deshawn's like, okay, sick. I got a free vote. Everyone's coming up Millhouse for me. And so, yeah, it was really good for Deshawn to do that. I think that was a weak play by Evie. I think you still kind of keep things up in the air. But she could have been trying to build trust. So I give her some credit for that also. Then we got the scrambling. And so I read some of Voce's post-exit interviews. And so Voce, he kind of knew that the jig was up with the Old Girls Alliance, but he was kind of flabbergasted. He really did feel like it should have been Tiffany who ought to have left, and that she was a liability for the tribe. And then in addition to that, he also thought that if there was an Old Girls Alliance, they wouldn't have gone after him. They would have gone after Xander. Xander was the one who was, a super threat. He had advantages up the wazoo. And so he had what's called in Survivor, like the meat shield strategies. You saw someone like Jeremy use this pretty effectively in his gameplay in previous seasons that he won. Previous season that he won. He's only won one. But yeah, so Voce kind of had this loose idea of, well, Xander's my meat shield. I'm so close with Evie. But I think part of what actually happened was Evie being away from the tribe really shifted things around. And so we saw Tiffany and Liana. Liana and Tiffany seem to have a good bond with Evie, and they're just like, let's get rid of Xander. And then Tiffany's like, I don't know how this advantage works. Maybe he has an idol. Maybe he has another idol. Maybe it's activated. The safer move is actually on Voce. And as much as she seemed like super confusing and it seemed like a bad decision, I actually think it was decently smart. And you actually had Evie have a soundbite to say, I actually do trust Xander. I feel more trust with Xander. And he's a better challenge asset for the tribe as well. So if you are going to be girl strong and you have that choice between Voce and Xander, I think they made the right move. And they made it seem like Tiffany had all the power, but because there were only 4 votes and Evie knew that, Evie and Liana could have still broken off and created a 2-1-1 vote and gotten Xander out if they really wanted to. But they chose to side with Tiffany and to vote Voce out. So there may have been more than we didn't see. Voce claims it was a weak decision. Voce claims that When Eddie came back after the journey, there's only about 10, 20 minutes before they went to Tribal, so he didn't really have a chance to get into her ear. Um, and so it's just how like Tiffany and Liana basically told her, we're changing up the plan. We're going for Voce, right? Dr. Voce down. So Voce was the vote out. Pretty unfortunate. I think Voce was a good player. I think he was quite smart. He definitely is a super fan, but I think he would have burned out eventually. I think it's probably it gets to the point where you start to see him as too much of a strategic threat potentially, and siding with someone like a Xander and having that strong alliance would have been dangerous down the line also. So I actually don't think it was that bad of a decision. I think the Yellow Tribe is doomed. We'll see if they can win any challenges. They don't have the puzzle skills. They don't have the strength. They don't have the swimming, and so unless there's a bit of a crapshoot challenge or one of the other tribes just seems to mess up, it is a two tribes win. So you just have to hope that one of them makes a mistake. I think we're gonna see Yellow at Tribal again. I think Xander's gonna be in trouble. I don't really see a way for him to really get out of it unless Evie and Liana flip and go for Tiffany. We did see in the preview that Liana was having some type of moment, so maybe there's some more maybe there's some more drama to be seen on the Yellow. But we haven't seen a ton from Blue or Green, so I'm hoping we get some more tribe dynamics to understand where those alliances are. Green, everyone's kind of aligned with everybody. Blue, we don't know too much about. It's very likely that Blue will just make it to merge, and so all these kind of pre-merge alliances and dynamics aren't important as the viewer, and so that may be why they're not showing us too much, because if Sydney and Heather have some type of like final two deal right now and they end up on different tribes after a swap, there's no reason to show that because it's not going to be relevant in the story. So that's kind of some of the editing clues about why we might not be getting a lot from Blue. But yeah, that's kind of my summary of episode 2. I want to thank all my loyal watchers, and yeah, we'll chat again for season 3 for episode 3, and stay tuned. I'll have my second episode for week 2 about my contender picks, and there's been some shifts and changes, so feel free to tune into that as well. Thanks, everyone.